leakage that were found in those first two studies I cited. Um, in many studies. Another one was that 71% of sub-Saharan African respondents estimated that 50% or less of their total devices are donated, which is in sharp contrast to the aforementioned statistic of 80%. Another kind of more informal look at the 26 donation agencies listed on the WHO website at the time only found that 4 had explicitly said they followed the WHO guidelines. So the key takeaways are what we found were that those who followed the WHO guidelines had a better experience with donated devices. That donated devices are often unregulated and don't accompany with spare parts or user manuals or these kinds of important things, and that the guidelines need to be better disseminated. The study could benefit from more respondents, a greater time will aid with more precision of these results, larger sample size, etc. But the key takeaways were clear from our study, but it is worth investigating further. And that's all I have from my end. Thank you, Adriana, and everyone.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Thank you, and continue your work in Congo. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. You're welcome.
Sorry that maybe it was not really listening very well. But the main issue that Daniel wanted to address in his study when we was in WHO and later is that the data that is published is not good. So we really need much more data to document what happens with donations. No? So now I'll ask Vikas if he can tell us a little bit about the study that you did. Yeah, you want to use the podium, you can. Thank you very much. And then, well, the study that Daniel made, it will be published as a paper, so we're hoping to get more data.
Good afternoon. I hope everyone's still awake from our wonderful lunch that we had. Thank you. So my name is Vikas Meka. So I wanted to share a little bit about some of the work that we had done as behalf of the National Academy of Sciences. But before we get there, I wanted to also echo a little bit of a story, which was where I stand here today. I'm a little bit of a conflict in terms of the role donations play, especially medical device donations. And I've been in a situation where in a hospital where the results of inappropriate donations actually ended up being a burden to the hospital. In this situation, it was they received some new infusion pumps. But unfortunately, the manuals were not in English, so none of the folks were able to understand how to operate them. As a result, these infusion pumps ended up being just sitting in the closet for a while. But at the same time, I had an opportunity to talk with an anesthesiologist in this hospital, and he told me how he was using a donated ventilator to provide support to the patient's post-operative surgery. So without that ventilator that was donated, he probably, many of the patients that he saw wouldn't have perhaps survived. So the dilemma I keep coming back to is what is the benefit or the harm that medical device donations are actually doing? And in some way, we've been in this situation before with medicines and how medicines back in, I think it was in the 90s, where there was a call to ban medications because pharmaceutical companies were dumping their products into low-income countries. But we had various stakeholders like the WHO and donors and actually the pharmaceutical companies themselves and also the governments come together to the end user. Without going into a lot of details, when you look at this image, you can clearly see there's so many different touch points, there's a lot of different stakeholders, and there's multiple ways in which these devices can ultimately go from source A to the destination. And because there's not a lot of coordination and communication, some of the stakeholders may not necessarily know of all the different activities each other are doing. Sometimes there's a duplication of effort. And so it creates a little bit of a confusion. The other aspect of it was we also recognized that in order to address this problem, we needed to overhaul the system. This efficient donation system, I think, ultimately comes through when you have an overarching approach to the system design. And when I say system design, it starts from how you actually select a device for a donation, how missions that can repair as opposed to it just sitting there idly. So those are, but in order to do all of that, it requires a lot of resources and it requires a lot of time and effort, something that obviously we can't do it over day. But in the short term, one of the things that we discovered is that if we start to collect some of the data between the various stakeholders and start to share that, we can actually start to recognize how the donation landscape is shaping up to be and provide a little bit more transparency between the different stakeholders, so there is greater chance for coordination between the stakeholders. So my last slide, I think I'm almost up on time. So one of the things I'm really excited about this event is, thanks to Adriana for putting this panel together, is because I'm very hopeful, because I think we're at a point where we can take some immediate steps to, especially over the next couple of days, in terms of how do you formalize some of the initial thinkings that we've all been talking about internally. And some considerations moving forward is, one, expanding on the initial National Science Academy conversation that we started about 1.5 years ago, but now inviting some of the other stakeholders, some participants such as yourselves actually being a part of that discussion and helping us to solution some of the challenges. And then finally, there are a number of different organizations that are actually doing some really important work in medical device donations, but sometimes their work gets overshadowed by organizations that may not necessarily follow the WHO guidelines. So it's important to recognize those organizations that do adhere to the policies and guidelines and maybe provide some accreditation process so they can be recognized, ultimately to improve the standard of donation and improve the quality of care as well. So, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Vikas. Thank you very much. Now, after this, well, during the study that Vikas and the Institute were doing, the Academy, I would like to invite Kathy to tell you what is Humatem doing. Humatem is an NGO in official relations with WHO, and they're doing some work in the ground, trying to follow WHO guidelines and support the countries. And it's basically for Francophone countries, so they are based in France, and Kathy, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Adriana, for giving me the floor and for introducing me. So good afternoon, everyone. My presentation will be focused on the European Directive on Waste, Electrical and Electronic Equipment. This regulation is still relatively unknown by the cooperation stakeholders and the NGOs, although it's very relevant to medical equipment donations, and we will see why and how. So what is precisely the directive I'm going to talk about? It's the European Directive 2012/19. It has replaced the directive of 2002. This directive is forming part of the European Environmental and Sustainability Agenda. And like every European directive, it has been transposed in the national law of each European country. It has to be, actually. For instance, the directive was transposed into the French Code of the Environment via a specific decree. And the deadline for transposing this directive was February 2014, but some European countries failed to transpose it within the legal deadline. So what is the purpose of the directive? So first of all, it intends to fight against the growing waste stream by reducing the disposal of waste, but also by encouraging recycling and reuse. And that is to say, by improving by extending the life of the equipment. So let's say the second life. On the other hand, and it's where it starts to be really interesting for us, the European directive intends to prevent shipment of faulty equipment to developing countries. And the excerpt of recital 15 of the directive is really clear on this subject. They say, such minimum requirements, we will come back again on this requirement later, such minimum requirements should in any case have the purpose of avoiding unwanted shipments of non-functional electrical and electronic equipment, EEE, to developing countries. And this is a good news to see that today the quality of equipment that is sent to developing countries has started to constitute a major concern for the European authorities. So why are medical equipment donations concerned by this directive? Medical devices are one of the 10 categories of electrical and electronic equipment that are covered by this directive. So it is really obvious that the directive has clear consequences on the reuse and transfer of medical device, and for that reason it directly concerns the NGOs and other aid organizations that are involved in the redistribution of second-hand medical devices to developing countries. So are there new obligations to meet? Yes, there are, and those new obligations are specific documents to provide, which are detailed in the Annex 6 entitled Minimum Requirements for Shipments. And actually, this Annex 6 is the most interesting part for us in the legal text. The principle to keep in mind is the following. The holder must prove that the equipment he wants to ship abroad is a used EEE and not a waste EEE. And to prove that, the holder should be available to provide to the authorities different documents. So a copy of the contract relating the transfer of property, and for example, for donations, it means the certificate of donations, declaration that none of the material within the consignment is a waste, an evidence of evaluation testing and a protocol, relevant transport documents, a test record with the results of the testing and the kind of test performed, and a declaration by the liable person on its responsibility. Some of those documents have to be kept by the holder, and some of them, because they can be asked, they can be required, so they can be shown to the authorities. And the 3 documents with the red thumb tag have to be fixed. They have to be fixed securely on the equipment itself or on the packaging, on the load. And a very important point in this directive, in these requirements, is also the packaging. Equipment that are packed incorrectly could be recharacterized as waste. So all of these documents are officially now mandatory to send an equipment to the developing countries. Of course, if the equipment is not electrical or electronic, this new text doesn't apply. But even if there is no obligation, it's very important to test their functionality before sending them. Sorry for that. Okay. So what kind of testing process and record are expected? The directive doesn't speak about tester. Sorry for that. The directive doesn't speak about testers or simulators to proceed to the testing, but we can guess that they have to be used in this process, like each biomed testing. So who will verify the compliance with the requirements? So it's important for the medical medical equipment holder, who wants to arrange the shipments, to be aware that inspection and monitoring are likely to be implemented by national authorities, and that sanctions may occur in case of transfer of waste. For instance, enforce return of equipment, which would be characterized as waste. So what are the key take-home messages? So testing certificate plus appropriate packaging plus 5 other documents are now mandatory. So even if a number of questions remain regarding how the directive will be interpreted and, more importantly, implemented in individual European countries, especially in terms of sanctions, the directive should have a positive impact on the technical quality of medical equipment donations to developing countries by impeaching the shipment of faulty second-hand equipment. If you are an NGO, you have to comply with the new regulation. Indeed, once transposed in national law, the measures are legally binding. If you represent a developing country used to receive medical equipment donations, you must require from your European development partners to comply with this new regulation. Shipments of defective medical equipment from Europe has now become illegal. But of course, this new regulation doesn't say anything about the needs assessment, about the local context, or the importance of medical and biomedical trainings and human resources. And we all know that it's really an essential part of the donation process. So you will find all this information regarding this directive in a collective publication that is available in French and English on our website. And this is freely available, of course. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, David. So now you've heard 2 studies, the one that Daniel did, the one that Vikas did with the Academy, then the work that the NGOs are doing and the regulation. And now I would like to ask Pascal to talk from the floor. So Pascal works in Benin, and he's one of the recipients. He's one of the biomedical engineers that is sitting in the other side of the table. And he will talk to us about what he receives. Pascal, the floor is yours. You can talk in French or in English, and you all have the...
Merci. Si je commence l'anglais, la moitié de la salle va se vider. Parce que if I start my presentation in English, I know that my English is not good, but I will speak French. Merci. Pascal Sorohei, je suis ingénieur bio au ministère de la Santé du Bénin. Bon, avec les 2 présentations passées, je veux laisser ces diapos et je vais directement aborder. Merci, Adrienne. Je vais directement aborder les difficultés que nous rencontrons dans les dons. Et souvent, ces dons sont souvent utiles, mais parfois nous avons des difficultés. Pourquoi? Parce que la maintenance n'est pas assurée les techniciens ne sont pas formés, ces dispositifs, on n'a pas souvent la main-d'œuvre pour entretenir ces dispositifs. Deuxièmement, nous n'avons pas les pièces de rechange pour assurer la maintenance de ces équipements. Et ça nous vient là. Parfois même, ces équipements ne sont pas adaptés par niveau de soins, par exemple. Je donne un exemple. Dans un centre de santé de niveau inférieur où il n'y a pas une installation pour recevoir un appareil de radio, vous allez voir le donateur qui vient installer l'appareil de radio dans la salle. Et ça, ce n'est même pas utilisé. L'exemple que nous avons, il y en a plein, c'est dans beaucoup d'hôpitaux où vous allez voir, c'est des équipements qui sont donnés, mais jamais utilisés. Il y en a, par exemple, cet échographe a été utilisé pendant 2 mois, et après, c'est garé. Il n'y a pas de pièces de rechange. Toutes les démarches effectuées, on n'a pas eu. Et ici, c'est un mail. Il y a les noms qui sont effacés, qui nous a été transmis. On était là quand, dans un centre hospitalier universitaire du Bénin, le directeur de l'hôpital a dit qu'il veut recevoir un important lot de dons. Et pour ça, il faut que le ministère assure le transport. Nous avons étudié rapidement, voilà, il demande même les factures du transport. Ces factures, quand on a reçu, c'est de la France, on a reçu cette information, on a écrit, moi j'ai écrit à Humatem pour demander le contact de l'ingénieur bio du centre qui veut transférer les équipements. Ces contacts ont été donnés, j'ai écrit à l'ingénieur bio pour demander certaines informations capitales, comme par exemple la fonctionnalité de l'équipement, le temps et le jour, la date de mise en service de l'équipement, la disponibilité des pièces de rechange. Ces informations ne nous sont pas parvenues. Au même moment, c'est un important lot d'équipements. Il y a même des scanners dans ces équipements. Au même moment, nous avons eu une pression politique. La pression politique vient des maires, des députés, des ressortissants de ces zones-là qui disent « mais nous, on veut nous donner des équipements, mais vous bloquez. Faites tout pour que ça passe. » Il n'y a pas ce jour où on ne reçoit pas d'appel. Le ministre même a été interpellé à l'Assemblée pour ce dossier. Finalement, quand on n'a pas ces informations capitales, on a fait une fiche à l'autorité pour dire voilà les conditions dans lesquelles ces équipements viennent. Nous ne savons rien de tout ce qui vient. Pour ça, qu'est-ce qu'il faut faire? Et le ministre nous a opposé un arrêté qui précise les conditions dans lesquelles nous devons obtenir les dons. Et par rapport à cet arrêté, on a travaillé. Le ministre a fait une communication en conseil des ministres et le chef de l'État a refusé officiellement ces dons qui coûtent des milliards de francs CFA, qui coûteraient, parce qu'on ne connaît même pas le contenu, mais il paraît que c'est de gros conteneurs. Et le Bénin a dit non. Officiellement, c'est le chef de l'État même qui a pris la décision sur les documents techniques que nous lui avons transmis. Et dans le même centre, quelques temps après, le même centre a contacté une ONG pour des dons. Et quand nous avons suivi avec ce centre, encore que ici, nous avons suivi, et c'est les fournisseurs, les donateurs, pardon, qui sont venus. Nous avons écrit un contrat, c'est les donateurs même qui sont venus, et là, ils sont en train d'installer les lits que vous avez vus. Ce n'est pas nous, on est là en tant que superviseurs, mais ils vont installer, comme c'est des lits, il n'y a pas besoin de pièces de rechange. Mais dans le contrat, il a été stipulé que si ce n'est pas installable, si ce n'est pas utilisable, ils sont obligés de repartir avec ces lits. Voilà un peu l'expérience du Bénin que je tiens à partager avec vous. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Pascal. Thank you very much. So, if there is anybody that wants to ask anything from the floor, you're welcome to do so. If you want to send your suggestions, you can also in your iPhone. But for me, it is clear. Now you see the point of view of the different people and the huge of the problem. No? It is immense. So many people are afraid to say no because maybe if they say no one time, they will never receive. But if they receive it, they have a lot of problems. So exactly what Pascal was saying, and the role of the biomedical engineering to stop things that are doing wrong, that is like really absolutely crucial. And that we should not be afraid of saying no. We really have to have the best equipment because it is the safety of the patient and also of the healthcare worker to be able to use the equipment adequately. No? So I would like to give, because of the time, to give a quick round of final comments from each one of you. And then if there's anybody that wants to ask anything from the floor, just raise your hand. Okay, there. Yeah, can you go to the microphone? Yeah. You can do it in French or in English. The translation is both French, English, French.
Yes, good afternoon. Thank you very much. My name is Dinsey Williams. I am here from Canada. And I just finished a 5-year study on donations to low-income countries. And I focus specifically on Sierra Leone and Ghana. And I would like to address Daniel's comments regarding the information that's in the literature. It is true that the numbers sometimes are misquoted, but I would like to challenge Daniel and his team to actually go on the ground and see for themselves exactly what's happening. So, for example, I interviewed 57 people in Ghana, and only 9 of them were aware of the Ghanaian donations guidelines. Fewer knew about the WHO guidelines. So if you actually ask people on the ground, the healthcare workers, the ones at the front line, they are the ones who are actually affected by inappropriate donations. So I visited 21 sites in 5 regions out of 10 in Ghana myself. I didn't ask for survey respondents. I actually went to the hospitals myself and I interviewed healthcare workers. That's the only way you can actually have the true information that we're looking for. And I would like to report, as of today, these same problems are happening. I don't think we should believe that it's actually better than the numbers predict. I think sometimes it's actually worse than what's actually reported in the literature. So I would challenge people who are writing papers to actually go on the floor, on the ground, and see for themselves exactly what's going on. Thank you.
My comment has part A and part B. One is to frame this within the marketing strategy of medical device companies. My name is Fred Hosea. I live in Ecuador. So I think a way to expand the approach to this is to approach it as was done in the state of Washington in the United States, where legislation was passed which made computer companies responsible for the disposal of devices when the consumer bought another computer. They would bring their old one, and the company, the manufacturer, was responsible for shipping and processing of the used technology. So that's a sort of stick approach. A carrot approach is to extend it to say that donations are a sort of secondary market for manufacturers. My mouth is right here on the...
We cannot hear.
You cannot hear?
We cannot listen well. I don't know the rest. Can you hear well? There's a problem with the sound? No?
It sounds loud to me.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Okay. So a second sort of more positive way to approach this is that donations can be seen as a secondary market for the manufacturers in terms of in terms of supplies, training, etc. And that manufacturers, when technology is being assessed for purchase, that life cycle component should be included, cascading to secondary use, and that manufacturers would be evaluated in terms of how well they support that secondary market need.
Thank you. Okay, any final comments from the people from the floor, because we are getting out of time? You want one more question? Comment?
Thank you very much. I'm Engineer Bukola Eson Emmanuel from Nigeria. And I just want to quickly talk about this interesting topic. Shortly before I left for India, about less than a month ago, I have an issue at hand, a practical case study from the University of Michigan in the United States. And they are partnering with two of the Nigerian universities, Aminu Kano Teaching Hospital in Kano State and the University College Hospital, Ibadan, in Oyo State, on the issue of transplant. The pacemaker transplant. They have about 400 units of pacemakers, which has been used in the United States. And they have agreed that they wanted to bring them to Nigeria to help